There is a structure standing in the desert outside Cairo that, by every honest measure, should not exist.
A pyramid, built 4,500 years ago, was leveled to within about 2 centimeters across its entire base, a tolerance most large modern structures don't even attempt to match. That's a real, measured fact, and it's exactly the detail getting hijacked lately by content claiming Grok AI revealed the pyramid was secretly a machine. None of those claims ever showed the actual conversation. So somebody asked Grok directly, who built the pyramids? The answer wasn't a secret. It was the same one archaeology already proved. That's the real story, and it's still shocking, just not for the reason you've been told. To understand why, it helps to see exactly how far the fake version of this story has traveled. What Grok actually said. There is a question that has followed the pyramids for as long as people have been writing anything down at all. Not how they were built, not even why. The oldest question, the one that keeps resurfacing every single time someone new encounters that structure standing in the desert outside Cairo, is simpler than that. Who actually did this? For most of human history, the answer has been treated as unstable. Slaves, some said. Lost civilizations, others insisted. A forgotten people with knowledge beyond their time, according to a version of the story that never quite dies, no matter how many times it's addressed directly. And more recently, a new voice has entered that same argument, one that didn't exist even a decade ago. Artificial intelligence. Grok AI, the system built by xAI, was reportedly asked who built the pyramids, or what the pyramids were really for. And the answer it gave supposedly shattered everything textbooks have said for a century. Some versions claim it revealed the pyramids were never tombs at all, but resonance chambers tuned to manipulate human consciousness. Others claim it uncovered evidence of a planetary energy generator built from quartz-rich granite and copper conduits, humming beneath the stone this entire time. But each version promises the same thing underneath the different details. A machine finally telling the truth nobody else was willing to say out loud. It's a genuinely compelling premise. It's also built on something worth checking before believing. So somebody did the obvious thing. They asked Grok directly, the actual question, no leading framing. No built-in assumption about hidden machines or lost civilizations. Who built the pyramids? And the answer it gave back was, in its own way, the most surprising thing to come out of this entire saga, precisely because it wasn't surprising at all. Grok's response was direct. The Egyptian pyramids were built by tens of thousands of ancient Egyptians during the Old Kingdom and Middle Kingdom periods. Not by aliens, and not by some erased or forgotten civilization. It described a highly organized workforce, made up of paid laborers and conscripted local workers, rather than the enslaved masses so many movies have taught people to picture. And rather than simply asserting that conclusion, it backed it with the same evidence real archaeologists have spent over a century assembling. A workers' cemetery, where skeletal remains show both the wear of hard physical labor and the presence of medical care, healed fractures that suggest injured workers were treated, not discarded. Contemporary written records, including a dated papyrus account from an inspector named Merer, describing his crew transporting fine limestone for the pyramid's casing stones near the end of Khufu's reign. Sit with that for a second, because it matters more than it sounds like it should. What Grok returned lines up with what archaeology already concluded, decades before this technology existed. No hidden machine, no forgotten master race, nothing waiting behind the stone that a century of excavation somehow missed. The real shock isn't in what Grok said, it's how far removed that is from what people have been telling you it said. And to understand exactly how far removed, it helps to look at who Khufu actually was and what he was building in the first place. Which pyramid? Which Pharaoh Grok's answer named Khufu. But that name alone doesn't explain much unless you understand who he was and what he actually set in motion. Khufu was a pharaoh of Egypt's 4th dynasty, and the Great Pyramid, the one most people picture when they hear the word at all, was the tomb he commissioned around 2550 BCE. When it was finished, it stood 481 feet tall, sheathed in smooth white casing stone that would have made it visible for miles under the desert sun. That casing is long gone now, stripped away over centuries, which is part of why the structure looks shorter and rougher today than it did to the people who built it.
An artificial intelligence was asked a simple question: who built the pyramids? Not the polite answer, not the textbook answer everyone already knows.
Inside that outer shell sit an estimated 2.3 million individual stone blocks, each one weighing somewhere between 2.5 and 15 tons. Khufu didn't build alone, and he wasn't the first in his family to attempt something this ambitious. His son Khafra built the second pyramid at Giza roughly 30 years later, around 2520 BCE, and that complex includes the Great Sphinx, the limestone monument with a lion's body and a pharaoh's face. Whether Khafra himself ordered the Sphinx built is still debated, since no inscription definitively confirms it, but the two structures have stood side by side ever since. Khafra's own son, Menkaure, built the third and smallest of the Giza pyramids around 2490 BCE. Its burial chamber notable for a vaulted ceiling and decorative niches that don't appear anywhere else on the plateau. But none of this started with Khufu though, and that matters more than it might seem. Generations earlier, the pharaoh Djoser had commissioned Egypt's first pyramid entirely, the stepped pyramid at Saqqara, built around 2670 BCE by his architect and physician Imhotep. Rather than the smooth-sided shape everyone associates with Giza, Djoser's pyramid rose in a series of stacked, flat-roofed tiers, an entirely new idea at the time. A few generations later, a pharaoh named Sneferu spent his entire reign figuring out, through trial and error, how to build the smooth-sided pyramid Djoser never attempted. His first try at Meidum started as a stepped design that he later tried to fill in and smooth over. His second attempt at Dahshur began rising at a steep angle on 4 straight triangular sides, but partway through construction, the structure grew unstable, forcing his builders to ease the angle to keep it standing, which is why it's known today as the Bent Pyramid. His third attempt, the Red Pyramid, finally succeeded, built from the start at a much lower, safer 43-degree angle. By the time Khufu inherited the throne, his engineers weren't starting from nothing. As one archaeologist studying the site has put it, Sneferu had already done the research and development. Khufu's generation simply had the chance to take full advantage of it and build the version that still stands today. That inherited expertise explains the ambition behind the Great Pyramid. It doesn't yet explain who actually carried it out, stone by stone, or what their lives looked like while they did. And that's where the real evidence starts. The evidence for who actually did the work. For most of the last 2 centuries, movies and popular imagination have filled that gap the same way, over and over. Enslaved masses, whipped into building something for a ruler who saw them as expendable. That image is compelling, and it's exactly the version most people picture without ever questioning it. But it is not what the evidence at Giza actually shows. There is no archaeological evidence that the pyramids were built by slave labor, and there's no historical support for reading the biblical story of Exodus onto the Giza Plateau specifically. Most reputable Egyptologists today reject the slave labor claim outright. That doesn't mean slavery didn't exist anywhere in ancient Egypt. It did, and enslaved people of various nationalities were regularly put to work in mines elsewhere in the kingdom. But the Giza pyramids themselves were treated as public works, built by both skilled and unskilled Egyptian laborers who were paid for their time. The clearest proof of that sits just south of the plateau itself, in what archaeologists now call the lost city of the pyramids. Excavations there uncovered long barracks separated by wide paved streets, alongside bakeries, breweries, and workshops built specifically to support the people working on the monuments. Archaeologist Mark Lenner, who led much of that excavation, has compared the experience of staying there to something like an ancient hotel, a description that only makes sense once you understand people rotated in and out of the site over time, rather than being permanently chained to it.
Indicates a pretty contrasting theory. The burials at the tombos suggests low-status workers could have merited. The study further reveals that while some of the skeletons at tombos belonged to people who had done little physical activity, others had been far more active through their lives. Scientists say that those with major physical activity did not live the life of a rich and privileged royal. Instead, they were workers who lived physically.
The physical remains of the workers themselves tell an even more direct story. A workers' cemetery, discovered in the 1990s, holds skeletons showing clear signs of hard physical labor, exactly what you'd expect from people hauling and positioning multi-ton stone blocks for years. But those same skeletons also show healed fractures, evidence that injured workers received medical treatment rather than being discarded or left to die. You don't set broken bones for workers you consider worthless. None of this describes a workforce erased from history. It describes an organized, physically demanding job that left behind its own cemetery and its own material record for archaeologists to eventually find. What it doesn't fully explain yet is how, exactly, that same workforce moved and positioned millions of individual blocks in the first place. The written record. The bones and the barracks tell you who the workers were and how they lived. They don't tell you, on their own, how the actual work got done, day to day, block by block. For that, you need something rarer than a skeleton. You need their own words. That record exists, and it's more specific than most people realize. Ancient papyri and diary accounts describe boatmen moving materials along the Nile and a network of constructed waterways built specifically to reach the Giza Plateau. Materials came from all over the region, not just the site itself. Granite, a much harder stone used for the pyramid's internal chambers, arrived from quarries at Aswan, far to the south. Copper tools came from the Sinai Peninsula. Timber, essential for sledges, levers, and scaffolding, was shipped in from Lebanon. One specific account is worth naming directly, because it's about as close to a first-hand construction log as ancient Egypt has left behind. Papyrus scrolls discovered at Wadi al-Jarf record the work of an inspector named Merer, describing in his own hand how his boat crew transported fine limestone casing stones from the quarry at Tura, floating them down the river during the actual reign of Khufu. None of this was a local effort contained to one worksite. Communities across Egypt likely contributed to it, turning pyramid construction into something closer to a national project than a single ruler's private undertaking. That coordination wasn't incidental to the pyramid's purpose. It was arguably part of the point. A structure built at that scale, requiring contributions from across the entire kingdom, was itself a demonstration of exactly how much wealth and control a pharaoh commanded. Knowing who supplied the materials and organized the labor still leaves one piece unanswered. Getting a 15-ton block of stone from a quarry, up a plateau, and locked precisely into place hundreds of feet in the air required an actual method. And that's where the real engineering debate begins. how they actually moved the stone. Everything covered so far: the workforce, the written records, answers who did this work, and how it was organized. But it doesn't answer the harder mechanical question underneath all of it. How do you move something that heavy, that far, without a single piece of modern machinery?
In 2024, something changed. Elon Musk's AI system Grok was given unrestricted access to all available data about the pyramids.
The generally accepted answer, backed by physical evidence found across multiple sites, goes like this. Workers moved massive stone blocks up ramps using wooden sledges, dragging them across sand that had been deliberately wetted down to reduce friction. Once a block reached the top, ropes and levers helped ease it those final few feet into a precise position, locking it into place against the stones already set beneath it. That basic method is fairly well agreed on. The part still genuinely up for debate is the shape those ramps actually took. Some researchers argue for exterior ramps that zigzagged up the outside of the growing structure. Others propose ramps that spiraled around the pyramid's exterior as it rose. A more controversial theory suggests the builders instead used ramps built into the interior of the pyramid itself, hidden from view, a theory that remains genuinely disputed among people who study this for a living. That disagreement is worth sitting with for a second, because of what it actually represents. This is real, ongoing scientific uncertainty. Archaeologists and engineers who study Giza professionally still don't have a single settled answer for exactly how the ramps worked. And that's a completely different thing from the claim that the pyramid's true purpose was somehow hidden or erased. Admitting you don't know one specific engineering detail is not the same as evidence for a secret. It's just honest science, openly showing its work instead of pretending certainty it doesn't have. That same uncertainty is exactly what future imaging technology may eventually resolve, by looking directly at the arrangement of blocks hidden inside the structure itself. Modern scans peering into places human eyes have never reached have already turned up some of the strangest, most misunderstood discoveries at Giza in the last decade, where the fringe theories actually come from. Those modern scans are exactly where this story gets genuinely interesting, and also exactly where it gets most misused. Since 2015, a real ongoing research effort called the Scan Pyramids Project, operating under the authority of Egypt's own Ministry of Antiquities, has been using cosmic ray muon detection to look inside the Great Pyramid without disturbing a single stone. Muons are naturally occurring particles that pass through solid rock, and by tracking how many of them make it through different parts of the structure, researchers can map empty spaces hidden deep inside without ever drilling in. That technique has already turned up genuine, previously unknown voids, including one large enough to rival the size of the Grand Gallery itself. Here's where honesty matters most. This is a genuinely open question, not a solved one, and it's worth resisting the urge to hand it a single tidy answer. One leading hypothesis, favored by archaeologist Mark Lenner, holds that these voids were part of the engineering system distributing weight and stress during construction, essentially built-in relief space, not hidden chambers built for any ritual purpose. But Egyptologist Salima Ikram has proposed something different and just as credible, that the space could have served as room for workers to maneuver blocks during construction itself. She has been direct about the limits of what's actually known here, cautioning that a lot of this may simply stay theoretical, that researchers might never get a definitive answer either way. And that's not the only open question left standing at Giza. The mysterious shafts running from the king's chamber toward the outside of the pyramid raise a similar, still debated question of their own. Mainstream researchers have offered two competing explanations: that they may have carried symbolic alignment toward specific stars, or that they may have simply functioned as air passages, and both possibilities remain actively studied by real Egyptologists today. What isn't taken seriously by working scientists is the specific claim that these shafts were engineered to point at Orion's belt as part of some grand cosmic design. That theory has been explicitly dismissed by researchers who've actually studied the alignment data, even though it remains one of the most popular claims among people convinced the pyramids hide something ancient astronauts left behind. That's precisely the gap the fringe true purpose content built around Grok's name has exploited. Real, unresolved questions about ramps, about voids, about shafts get real, honest acknowledgement from actual researchers. That same honest uncertainty then gets quietly swapped out for a much louder, much more dramatic claim, dressed up as if an AI system uncovered it independently, when the actual open questions were never secret to begin with. Why the real story is the actual shock. Here's the part that actually earns the title. Grok was asked who built the pyramids, and the answer really did shock people, just not in the direction most of the internet has been telling you. For months, dozens of videos have each claimed that Grok revealed something else entirely, that the pyramids were never tombs at all, but piezoelectric generators, infrasound devices built to manipulate human consciousness, or pieces of some hidden planetary machine. Those claims spread fast because they promise the thing everyone secretly wants: a machine finally saying what no historian dared to. But none of those videos show an actual transcript or link back to a real exchange anyone can check for themselves. When someone actually asked Grok the plain question, with no leading framing built in, the real answer arrived. And it was the sourced, evidence-backed one archaeology has spent a century assembling. Organized, paid labor, backed by a workforce that left behind its own homes, its own cemetery, and its own written records, along with genuine, still unresolved questions about ramps and voids and shafts, acknowledged honestly instead of inflated into a secret. That's the actual shock. Not a hidden machine, not a hidden purpose, but the truth sitting in plain sight the whole time, verified and documented, waiting for anyone willing to ask the direct question instead of accepting the more exciting one. Grok was asked who built the pyramids, and the answer was thousands of paid, organized Egyptian workers, exactly what archaeology had already established. The real shock is that the truth was always right there, waiting for someone to actually ask.